Today on Locked On Rockies, while we get excited for a homestand for the Colorado Rockies, opening day at Coors, we break down the Rockies losing. And it's not about the Rockies just losing, it's about how the Rockies are losing.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, and happy opening day. Man, I am just crushing it on my intros today, Drew. Welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 5th day of April in the year 2024. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day is talk Rockies baseball, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you folks can be part of the show, firing off your Rockies hot takes in the Locked On Rockies comment section. I want to bring up one of my favorite ones to you, Drew, too, that came from last week. We had someone, and I know it was in good fun. It was just a good classic YouTube comment. Someone saying Trevor Story and a bunch of greater than signs, Troy Tulowitzky. Your immediate reaction to that.
Wow. That's a really interesting debate, because from a health standpoint, absolutely. From reliability and even from a clutch standpoint, that was the one thing on the field that Tulo didn't do. But man, I think because he got hurt so much, and because that team that team peaked like his first year, or those first couple of years, people tend to forget how dang good Troy Tulowitzky was. There really truly was a while there where you could make an argument that on a game-to-game basis, he was the best player in Major League Baseball, even over Mike Trout. He was putting up more WAR per game. As we all know, he wasn't playing enough games. He couldn't not get hurt. So raw skills, just across the board, no, Troy Tulowitzky was the better ball player. But the players have a saying: the best ability is availability. And there was a lot of times where Tulo wasn't available, and Story fought through stuff and was able to, help the Rockies to back-to-back postseasons, even when he wasn't at his best. There in, was it 17, where he led the league in strikeouts? I think it was that first year. Yeah. So yep. I totally understand anyone who would say that, because Story was so much more reliable. And I think fans like players who are reliable. But Tulo was the better baseball player.
Yeah, Tulo, I think, is right up there. Now, he's kind of replaced me as my Rockies fandom has really taken over. My original answer to the question of take an athlete and make him healthy his entire career, if you had that wish, used to be Griffey, but now give me Tulo, because who knows what he could have done for the Rockies franchise. But Drew Creasman from Mile High Sports joins us today. We're going to be breaking down all things Rockies. A wonderful start for the Rockies, I say, with all the sarcasm in the world. But Coors Field, finally, hopefully the beacon of light on the way here, as it is opening day. Before we dive into everything today, I just want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Drew, just give me your initial thoughts. I mean, let's just start there. I mean, obviously, you are someone that is online, talks a lot of Rockies, is on the front lines of the Rockies conversation. Just break it down for me how you have taken this opening week of Rockies baseball.
Yeah, I mean it's bad, Paul. It's bad, right? I don't want to. It's funny. I'm perhaps if I'm famous or infamous at all for being a little bit of an apologist or an optimist or whatever when it comes to this team. I don't really see it in those ways. I try to take a distanced look from it at times. Sometimes I just try to focus on stories that aren't the inevitable frustration of the Colorado Rockies. This is my 12th season doing it. I was born in this state. I've grown up with this team. So there's a certain amount of use to it also that I think that comes from that. But there's also, as I wrote today, I knew they were going to be bad, and I expected them to lose a lot of baseball games. I didn't expect it quite to be the clown car crash that it's been so far. On every level, they're obviously they're throwing batting practice up there, but then they're also dropping the baseball. They're throwing it around. They're not running the bases well. They're striking out. Nobody's hitting well except maybe Ryan McMahon. And so it's just there's no facet of the team, or even someone like me, who's quite frankly gotten very good at looking at bad teams and saying, yeah, but look at this guy or that guy or whatever. And right now you're just like, I don't know, Victor Vodnik's stuff looks good, and beyond that, it's brutal. It is, it's a handful of games. There's always the small sample size caveat in baseball. And if I'm going to throw a silver lining take at you, it's that I don't see how it could get much worse than this.
Right.
Just by the law of numbers. Like, they're going to lose a lot of ball games, but they shouldn't lose this ugly this often forever.
Right. And I think that's what's the toughest part is, again, I can relate to you. Grew up watching the team, grew up following the team. I haven't been covering, I don't, covering is such a tough word for me. I talk about the team. I like to put a little bit of a disclaimer there, because folks that are actually at the ballpark and covering the team and in the clubhouse, I mean, that's a whole other layer. I'm really, I was watching 150, 160 Rockies games anyway. And they're like, I am very fan driven. But I also have to think differently when I do this type of stuff, because I don't want to always talk about the negative stuff with the Rockies, and I won't. But I had an episode earlier where I was very critical of the front office, but it's exhausting a little bit to always have to do this. Like, I know what you all have to say, and you bombard everyone with sell the team. One, folks, there ain't a single one of us that can do anything about that.
You're right.
And we all have talked about, there's not a single person that talks Rockies baseball that hasn't talked about Dick Monfort and his influence on this team. And it just gets to the point where we just want to talk about the potential, the possibilities, and that's what we had to do. But then this start happens.
Yeah, right.
And it just fuels everything, because there's really no answer. Like, I got to tell you, I think the biggest heartbreak is Kyle Freeland. I think Rockies fans could agree. Chris Bryant's a whole other story, but for me, it was, increased velocity. He focused on everything on paper that Kyle Freeland said was exactly what I was hoping for.
Yeah.
And then opening day, and then the follow-up. So I don't know. How do you process this, and how do you, I guess it is a small sample size. The Rockies have 150 plus baseball games still to go, or 150 plus still baseball games to go. Right. But you can't help but feel like it just is hard to see the adjustment in this team.
Yeah. It's interesting you ask how I process that. I want to tell a little bit of story, because a story about Story, who we were already talking about, actually. Because how I've come to process these things is by reaching for the experience of similar experiences in the past. And I remember out of the gate that year, I think it was 2017, where he was striking out. He looked awful the first 2 weeks of the season. And I wrote a piece. I can't remember if I wrote a whole thing about it or if I just sent out a tweet. And I don't think this person would say that I'm speaking out of school. So it was Jack Corrigan, who is the voice of the Rockies on the radio and has been for a very long time. Somebody for whom everyone down there has the utmost respect. Pulls me aside in the dugout and just says, when you're down here every day, things like that always get back around to the guys, just so you know. And he didn't say, hey, don't say that, or don't. But I probably went a bit overboard and saying, you got to bench this guy. Maybe you got to send him back down to AAA. It's just his second year. Yeah, his rookie season had been great, but there was no reason to be certain that Trevor Story was going to become the kind of star that he really did when he looked that bad. I remember the first couple of weeks of CJ Cron when he first came to a Colorado Rockies uniform, and there were whispers in the press box that he might have to retire. He went on to have the best offensive season for the Rockies that year, was an all-star the next year, and is still out there playing and making money and doing all right for himself, right? Sometimes the game of baseball has a way of making you look like you don't even know what you're doing holding a bat, right? Like even in the NBA or the NFL, if you're playing bad and you're losing, it doesn't look like you don't know what you're doing. But sometimes in baseball, you're swinging at a curveball that's bouncing in the other batter's box, and fans are going, "What is this?" And then 2 weeks later, you're not doing that anymore. So that's not me saying, "Oh, for sure, Chris Bryant's going to get it together the way CJ Cron did," or for sure the team in general is going to, get better. But there are, even last year, talking about lessons learned, you would think 103 loss season, they looked terrible. They lost that game 25-1 to the Angels last year, right?
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Right? And you would have thought, well, how could that season have had anything for Rockies fans to sink their teeth into and project positivity about for the future? But look at what Brenton Doyle did, emerging as maybe the best defender in baseball. Look what Nolan Jones did, how Ezekiel Tovar played. And over the course of 162, there will be those things that happen, and you can start sinking your teeth into them. But right now, as we sit here, with the small sample size, and it's just, but that's where I have to go back to other seasons, to other times where I felt like, can this get any worse? And things do get better.
And, hopefully what usually is the cure for the Rockies is Coors Field. And, it's they still are playing tough opponents, but they do head to Coors. So let's talk about that here and the impact of a homestand for the Colorado Rockies. We're going to do that coming up here in segment number 2 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Factor. You can eat stress-free this spring with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never-frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. You can choose from a weekly menu of 35 options, including popular options like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, or vegan and veggie. Also discover more than 60 add-ons every week, like breakfast, on-the-go lunch, snacks, and beverages to help you stay fueled and feel good all day long. What are you waiting for? Get started today and fuel up for your springtime goals. If you are looking for something a little bit more fancy, well, guess what? You can try the gourmet meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, truffle butter, broccolini, and asparagus. Factor is your solution for fast premium meals without the need for cooking. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50 and use code LockedOnMLB50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box. That's code LockedOnMLB50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box while your subscription is active. We're also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action. While you watch your favorite sports and players, you just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, and you can watch the winnings roll in. So maybe if you want to buy into the Rockies offense at home, you can choose stats like RBI, home runs, hits, and more at PrizePicks. All you got to do, pick more than, less than, and you can see all the action on the PrizePicks app. You can download the app today and use code LockedOnMLB and get a first deposit match up to $100. That is a $100 first deposit match when you download the PrizePicks app and use code LockedOnMLB, all lowercase, and you can get that first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Shout outs to all our everydayers out there, joined by Drew Creasman. Drew, give us a quick rundown of what you do here and where people can find what you cover and things like that.
Sure, yeah. I do the written content and the podcast stuff and some short videos all over at Mile High Sports. So milehighsports.com. There's a magazine out there. There's still print, ladies and gentlemen. You can go and find that at various locations throughout Denver as well. The podcast is 20th and Blake. Do that couple times a week, and more if there's newsworthy stuff, which there hasn't been a ton of lately. And then the thing that I'm actually most excited about that I've been doing lately are these 1-minute short videos on Mile High Sports Instagram, just covering individual topics, kind of short stories. Sometimes it's, hey, Ezekiel Tovar, here's who he's been and why they signed him the way they did. Or, I've got one coming up. Just remember that time John Gray struck out 16 dudes in one game. That was pretty cool, right? Those kinds of memories. If the team continues to be bad or this bad, there will probably be a lot more of like, hey, remember Ellis Burks and things like that. But I hope there will be several that can also cover what's going on now. But those little 1-minute videos are a lot of fun to make. And I think they're kind of palatable for the Rockies fan right now, where it's like, do you really want to wallow in it? Or do you just want a bit of information, a little bit of entertainment, and to go back to maybe something else?
Yep. How much Rockies do you really need? Well, hey, tune into us. You support us, folks.
Yeah. All the podcasts, of course. Listen to.
Well, it's a day. It really is a day of celebration. Look, even with the bad start, if you love Rockies baseball like we love Rockies baseball, today is a special day. I, of course, wish I was in Denver. I am a jealous Rockies fan from afar. There are few things better than being down in downtown Denver at a Rockies opening day, no matter what the outlook of the team is. And you know what? We saw a team last night with a pulse, and maybe that inning is what the Rockies need. And so how bad do the Rockies need not only a homestand, but a successful homestand? I mean, it feels like this one's a little bit more important to, in front of your fans, say, hey, we're fighting back. And if you go above 500, you give yourself a punch. You're back within reaching room of 500 overall. A successful homestand could really change the narrative for the Rockies here.
Yeah, I think that's all absolutely true. And you're 100% right that it's often been over the years, especially when the team is young as they are now or inexperienced, that it's night and day how they play on the road versus at home. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if they come out and are markedly better. But for me, it still really does come down to, the kind of final thought of my piece today was, if you're rebuilding, and I believe that they are, a big part of that is building. You've got to see particularly key players. For me, there's like 10 to 15 guys on the roster. I love Charlie Blackmon. You love Charlie Blackmon. Everybody watching, listening, everybody loves Charlie Blackmon. He's actually been pretty good. He hadn't struck out yet this year. He's actually the one guy.
Arguably the Rockies' best player.
That's right. It doesn't register in my mind very much because I'm so focused on the big picture. This team is all about the future. And I love Charlie, but I don't think he's going to be a factor in 25 and beyond.
Right.
Where guys like Nolan Jones, Ezekiel Tovar, Brenton Doyle, Michael Toglia, who's actually looked all right in his very limited time. I think Michael's looked good. I mentioned Victor Vodnik earlier. So particularly Jones has looked rough early. So those are the kinds of things that, and if Nolan Jones can come into this homestand and hit a couple of dongers, throw somebody out at third or second or home or something like that, make a nice defensive play, just get his feet back underneath him a little bit so he doesn't have to feel like he has to win baseball games all by himself. Mm-hmm. Like those kinds of things. If Tovar can get on a roll, even if some of these new guys, I'd really love to see more out of Cal Quantrill and Dakota Hudson looked all right. Yeah. I thought he pitched a decent ball game. Feltner is a guy who there's still some interesting potential there and can start to. So for me, it's less about can the team get to or over 500 for a little while that'd be great. That'd be fun. But it's more that can some of these key players start giving us that glimpse of a better future so that you say, okay, the reason that they're losing games now is because the veteran talent just isn't good enough to get it done. But these guys are going to be replaced in a few years by Zach Veen and Drew Romo and Yanquiel Fernandez. We're going to come along and hopefully join a group of Nolan Jones, Ezekiel Tovar, Brenton Doyle. Maybe Michael Toglia has worked his way into that. Lowrys Montero, I think his process has looked a lot better this year. The results haven't followed yet. He's a guy, if he has a big homestand, that could be great news, not necessarily for the season, but for the future of the Colorado Rockies, which is more important.
Well, and I think, his future is really interesting, as I think the trade deadline could shape up to be something interesting. And I don't want to go immediately there, but as you're looking at the storylines develop, what does Montero's, what does Rymack's, what does Brendan Rodgers's, storylines look like as we go through the season? All guys, and of course, the biggest one, of course, Chris Bryant. I think if there's somebody on the veteran side of who needs a big homestand, it's Chris Bryant. I mean,
Sure.
he certainly needs. I mean, and there's signs from that inning that you can take and say, all right, two hits from Chris Bryant and a walk, and that could be the thing to get off on the right direction. Tovar, really great swing there for that double late, and who knows, maybe Jake Cave will just be that random guy that will thrive at Coors Field, because they just I was hesitant on that move, wasn't a big fan of it, but he's come in situations and played that veteran off the bench role. I really am watching the vets in this homestand. The young guys, and as much as it's been tough to watch Nolan Jones, it's like, again, gotta let him play, let him have some time, gotta let him figure out, especially with Tovar. It's kind of like you got about like 2 seasons until I'm even like close to worrying about like
I know
some of the stuff, like because I still like his approach and I still like what he's doing now, and but it's those veterans, and the pitching staff is highlighted there. Like you said, Dakota Hudson, great, but it is Austin Gomber. What a stage for you, a moment for you. I know it has been. I think he's been open. It has been a frustrating Rockies experience for him. I think that might even be an understatement to say, but this is a moment for him. Show us. The Rockies do need to show us, like you said, building, because the thing that I haven't liked about this stretch, even though it's been tough, is I preached this a little bit. The Rockies don't respond well. They don't lose one. It's not a lost series, split series, one series. They lose 7 of 8. They lose 9 of 10. It's and in there are the 12-2 losses.
I was going to say, and then you've got those games that are over by the 3rd inning.
Right. And it's. Those things can't happen as frequently this year. They will happen, but to see them happen twice in the beginning of the season while other teams are at the beginning of the season as well, it is tough to see, especially when you start the season and the Diamondbacks are the opponent and they just kind of hold up a mirror of like, or like they just look and say, hey, like we were both neck and neck a couple of years ago, and man, the gap between the Diamondbacks and the Rockies could be at its highest point that I can remember.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like that really was a brutal opening series. And to be like, well, here's this team that lost 103 last year and didn't really make any significant changes immediately, which I actually ultimately think is wise. But then, all right, well, here's the defending champs. Go get them. And an incredibly hot offense. Not that the Rockies pitched especially well, but there were some of those, if you really want to break it down. Christian Walker hit 2 homers on pitches that were outside the strike zone. Nice. Like dude's he kills the Rockies, and he kills a lot of other people too. He's a great hitter. So that was a brutal way to begin it. But there's also a measuring stick again for these young guys to understand that's how far we've got to go. That is how much better we've got to get collectively, individually, all of that. So in a way, if they respond well, it's good, for the young players, if taking their lumps now. Sometimes there's a reason the phrase, I guess, is make or break, because sometimes break is what happens, and promising young players who you thought were going to turn into stars end up being journeymen, and, the other way around. So the jury is still out on a lot of these players. So we do need to start seeing growth from them. And I like the way you put it, Paul, that they need to respond well in little ways and big ways. There's a lot of letting things get completely out of hand, letting innings get out of hand, letting games get out of hand, letting stretches of games get out of hand. And they've got to find somebody in that clubhouse who's going to step up and say, no. We're not losing a 12th game in a row, whatever it is, I agree.
They have the right type of, I think Charlie Blackmon, the reason why you're confident, like he is still that right guy. But like you said, I'm not worried about Charlie Blackmon. I'm just enjoying watching Charlie Blackmon play baseball for as long as possible, and I'm all right with it. And I guess I'll have to eat my words because I was like, stop playing him in right field, and there he is, still out there playing right field. It still ain't the prettiest right field,
no.
but if he's gonna keep being the guy, I mean, he is the tone setter, and I think is a critical piece of this Rockies team. I think he's actually the type of guy the Rockies will need throughout this season. I want to talk about one area of the pitching staff. If you think you will see progress, or I think the area of the Rockies pitching staff needs to improve in the most, and just wrap up a little bit here as we try to rebuild some confidence in our Colorado Rockies. And I'm also going to ask you a Mario baseball related question if you're prepared for that as well, Drew, coming up here in segment number 3 of today's episode of Locked on Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claims as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker dealer. This is the Locked on Rockies podcast, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Talking to Drew Creasman here of Mile High Sports, also an avid video game nerd myself. Like myself here, Drew, and we were talking, nobody has more Mario themed and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles themed thing on their sets, and Rockies themes. We gotta be the thinnest of slivers on a pie chart of people.
That's right. I was going to say we use the same decorator, but that's also not true. We just are the same decorator.
Well, before we have fun with a Mario baseball question, the biggest concern I have for this Rockies pitching staff is walks. Are you confident that this team is going to be able to hit the zone more and find the control? Because, man, I mean, you're going to lose like you lost last night if you keep walking 9 batters a game.
Yeah, you can't do that. And, will they? I don't know. 4 of the 5 starters, interestingly enough, don't have a history of walking too many people. Kyle Freeland's never been a high walk guy in his career. Cal Quantrill has been incredible at not walking people throughout his career. Austin Gomber, for everything he's never been a high walk rate guy. In fact, there was a stretch last year where he went like 7 or 8 games without walking more than 1 batter in a row, right? The bullpen is a little more up and down with that. The one guy who came in with a resume that made me go, oh, no, was Dakota Hudson. His walk rate is extraordinarily high throughout his career, and he's the guy who's probably pitched the best ball game of any starter so far. Baseball's a funny game, right? But I do think, the Freeland thing is a whole other, that's a 30-minute podcast in and of itself that would probably require a pitching mechanics expert and a mental health expert. And there's a whole lot going on there. But I think, with Gomber and Quantrill, the walk numbers have got to come down. They just have to. With Dakota Hudson, I'm still worried about it because he's always been a high walk guy. The bullpen can't do it. And at this point, if you're a young guy and you're walking people in the pen, that should mean you get sent down. And if you're a veteran and you're walking guys in the pen, that should mean you get DFA'd. And they got a lot of relievers just kind of around. So they can't be tolerating walks out of the bullpen. That's something that, now they've got some guys in the minors. Riley Pint comes immediately to mind, who's got great stuff, but a walk problem. So it's not necessarily that the first guy you would bring up, but they do have several relievers just kind of around. So I think it'll get better because you're right. For me, that's the biggest bugaboo of all. That's the worst thing you can do as a pitcher at Coors Field is walk people. That's how solo home runs become 3-run home runs, and 3-run home runs win ball games. Solos you can work around, but those ones that really kill you. Again, back to the innings that get away from you, walking guys, gets your defense cold. It gets the other team's offense in a momentum. Everyone feels like they're doing a good job. Everything is wrong with it. So I hope so. Can I finish with I hope so?
Yeah, no, I really think that is it. I mean, we have to hope that this team adjusts, and they will get killed if they don't. If they continue to walk batters at this rate, it's only going to get worse, especially with the low strikeout numbers of not having great, big. We don't. I sent this out the other day. I think this so far, I think it's painfully obvious how much this team misses German Marquez and John Gray specifically, guys that could come in and get you. I don't have any confidence in any of these Rocky starters to get me a 10 strikeout game. Right. German Marquez and John Gray, they can strike out 10. That could happen multiple times in a season with those guys. Right. And that's what I think this rotation is missing. What's the one thing, maybe it's one thing, or what are you really hoping for this homestand? Like you said, you're taking it doesn't have to be just wins or losses, but what will make you feel more confident as a Rockies fan as a big takeaway from this homestand?
Yeah, I really do think it would just be, okay, broadly speaking, I'll say consistent play. Right. But it's the fundamentals have to get back. Like, just right now, most of the starting pitchers were throwing either stuff in the dirt or batting practice. Right. A lot of the hitters are swinging at stuff. Rogers has had some terrible at bats. Jones, Bryant, they're swinging. It's just stop swinging at stuff out of the zone. Put good swings on pitches in the zone. Play fundamentally good baseball for a full series, even if you lose, no mistakes. That's probably a better way to put it. Stop beating yourselves. You're already at a talent disadvantage. You're at an experience disadvantage. So when you make mistakes, that secures a loss every time. You're not a team that can make mistakes. And I just want to see them tighten it up across the board. And if I could pick one play, if I need to get more specific than that, I want Nolan Jones to have a big homestand, a big home series. That guy has all of the potential to be a star in every way. In fact, a star in more ways than even other Rocky stars have been. Guys like Nolan Arenado, Troy Tulowitzky, Todd Helton, even to some degree, Charlie Blackmon. Very straight-laced, very serious guys who commanded a lot of respect, but didn't always inspire a lot of people around them. Nolan Jones inspires the people around him. He's everything. He's got all the tools, all the personality, even the fact that he's 6'5" and the way he commands the room. So if there's one guy you could wave a magic wand and say, let him reach his potential, because that really could make the Rockies a better team with just one player, which is hard to do in baseball. That's the guy you want reaching his potential.
I couldn't agree more. I think he is someone, and I think the other person would be Chris Bryant in that situation, where to make people feel more confident that he's someone that I think thirsty for a big series as well. Drew, we are running out of time here, but I just want a quick rapid fire answer here. Is Mario the best comp for Larry Walker?
Again, 5-tool player, right? He's got the hops, probably got Walker beat on hops. Mm-hmm. Speed's going to be close to even. Mario doesn't have top speed. Arm strength, of course, both top throwers. That's probably a wash there. Was Mario a lefty?
Technically everybody's a switch hitter, but
that's right. That's right. I'm trying to remember.
They really teach that at the basics in the Mushroom Kingdom. It's your Toadsworth's got him batting from the left side and the right side right away. So that's kind of his preference.
Yeah. That's switch hitting is a dying art. There's another reason to root for Michael Toglia. It's
a guy that I will be watching very carefully as well, because I think a big under people talking about it, but something to focus on is him making the team is a big deal. But Drew, we're out of time. Where can folks go to stay up to date with all of your work and all your Rockies coverage throughout the season?
At Drew Creasman, at Mile High Sports, milehighsports.com, 20th and Blake.
Excellent. Thank you, Drew. And folks, you can find us on the Locked On Rockies podcast. You can find us on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Enjoy opening day, folks. Enjoy being out there. I'm not. Is the weather supposed to be good for it?
I think so.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it'll be. Hopefully, it's good weather for you all. But go out and enjoy the first game at Coors Field. And until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.